In today's report, virtue signalling failed by Kent Police as ex-Met Detective Chief Inspector calls the Garden of England PC World. Manchester Police pay out a 5-figure apology after police mock a woman's assault allegation, only to knock on her door 6 years later due to the suspect assaulting another woman. A North Wales police constable gets sentenced for excessive and unnecessary force after being called a bald lady garden. A former Manchester Police detention officer is sentenced for chatting up 13-year-olds online, and jury trials are at risk as Justice Secretary Robert Buckland considers introducing legislation which would mean some offences could be tried by a judge and not a jury. This and more coming up. Hello ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, innies, outies and in-betweeners. My name's Dan and welcome back to another PAP Reports. It's Monday, June the 29th, 2020. Virtue signalling is the newest pastime of police forces across the country. In fact, I think it must have replaced the National Police Football League, as almost daily police forces seem to try and outdo each other with virtue signalling appraisal-seeking nonsense. This time it's Kent Police, whose Chief Constable, Alan Pewsley, is one of those who took a knee at the Black Lives Matter event, which isn't an issue if it's his personal belief and is done in his personal time. But as a Chief Constable who is supposed to remain, or at least appear to remain, impartial in all matters of politics whilst carrying out his duties, isn't exactly something we would expect. Well, this time Kent Police decide to try and appease the Gypsy Roma community by running up the flagpole a Gypsy Roma flag outside the force's HQ. Kent Police said in a social media post that it wanted the county to be welcoming and safe for everyone. Well, in that case, you'd best run up one of these on the flagpole next, seeing as we still have far too many of this community in our country. Or better still, just take a leaf from the UN and use the public purse to pay for enough flagpoles to run up flags for every country. That way you can give yourselves a big pat on the back and actually be seen to be inclusive of everyone, not just your favour of the week. The Gypsy Roma Traveller Association thanked Kent Police for its support. They commented, "Thank you Kent Police for your continuing support for our community. It's lovely to see all the positive comments on this post." And to be fair, I've nothing against the police supporting their local communities, but it seems that they promote some to the detriment of others when they should be simply supporting the Kent community and not individual segments of it. Ex-Metropolitan Detective Chief Inspector Mick Neville gets it. As a Kent resident, he said they've turned the Garden of England into PC World. That's political correctness, not the shop. With healthcare professionals and government officials telling us just how serious a virus that's killed less people than the normal flu yearly and is in fact said to have mostly killed those who would have died anyway due to being close to the end of their lives and having compromised immune systems, you would think that testing, tracking and tracing would be the highest priority for all hospitals to ensure that people are safe. Well, we've already seen how serious these people think the pandemic is when they all congregated outside hospitals, on bridges, inches from one another with absolutely no PPE to clap for carers on a Thursday night. If that wasn't enough to make you wonder, then maybe knowing that 181 Hertfordshire hospital patients were discharged into care homes between the 19th of March and the 15th of April, with only 46 of them being tested for COVID. Although the government said it was guided by the latest scientific advice, Hertfordshire public health officials have now put self-reported suspected and confirmed care home deaths at 524. Although there is never any figures on how many people died in those care homes in previous years when COVID wasn't an issue. East and North Hertfordshire NHS Trust and West Hertfordshire Hospitals NHS Trust said the decision to discharge patients into care homes is always taken into consultation with health and care partners in line with national guidance. A Department of Health and Social Care spokesman said, "We have been doing everything we can to ensure care home residents and staff are protected during this unprecedented global pandemic. Every stage of our response has been guided by the latest scientific advice." Advice that has generally come from people who also are more than happy to ignore that very same advice. Isn't that strange? Greater Manchester Police showing themselves for the cretinous filth that they are yet again, this time by dismissing a woman's rape allegations as bullshit in internal emails. The woman contacted Greater Manchester Police in November 2011 claiming that she had been sexually assaulted after police decided to dismiss her claim. Internal emails were sent between a detective sergeant and a police constable saying no crime submitted due to it all being bullshit, with the pair ignoring recommendations that further DNA testing should be carried out. 5 years later, police contacted the victim to let her know that the same man she had alleged had assaulted her had been accused again by another victim. In the mocking email thread, the constable said, as thought, no trace of semen. The sergeant then replied, "You're joking. I thought this case was nailed on. She had a vision of darkness, a heavy feeling and everything." In a statement, the woman said, "When I gave my original statement, I felt I wasn't being believed. I heard nothing from the police either, as they said it all depended on the forensics. I just assumed they'd boxed it off as nothing could be proved. I never felt supported, just ignored, and I had to try and get on with life. Because of them coming back to me in 2016, this brought the nightmare back to my life. I married knowing I had to relive what had happened to me, and that was certainly not something you want starting out in a marriage. It was really hard to try and cope with it, and I didn't cope." Greater Manchester Police, of course, have apologised after an investigation by the IOPC in which a total of 4 officers were investigated and were found to have a case to answer for misconduct for failing to properly investigate an allegation of rape and failing to record it as a crime. 2 of the constables had already left the force before the IOPC investigation was launched, and a female constable resigned before her misconduct hearing, and the detective sergeant received a written warning. The woman was awarded a 5-figure compensation payout, but I bet the letter that came with it said it's not an admission of anything. North Wales Police Constable PC Anthony Butlin, not to be confused with the seaside resort, was found to have committed gross misconduct after allegations of him moonlighting and performing other paid work were proven against him. In a statement released following the hearing, the force said on Wednesday the 24th of June an accelerated misconduct hearing was conducted by Chief Constable Carl Fawkes at Police Headquarters Colwyn Bay concerning former Police Constable 1766 Anthony Gareth Butlin, who had already resigned from North Wales Police on the 8th of June 2020. The former constable faced an allegation that he had breached the standards of professional behaviour relating to discreditable conduct, gross misconduct, and in that he had sought and obtained paid employment contrary to police regulations. Former Constable Butlin had accepted that his conduct amounted to gross misconduct and had tendered his resignation. Chief Constable Fawkes confirmed that he had heard and read the facts of the case and that the officer's conduct did amount to gross misconduct. Having given due consideration to the facts, he said, in the case and to the representations made on behalf of former officer, the Chief Constable determined that the former Police Constable Butlin continued to be a serving police officer. He would have been dismissed from the organisation forthwith. The former officer will now be added to the barred list and maintained by the College of Policing. And it's amazing how a bit of moonlighting gets you barred from policing, but many of the more serious misconduct or criminal acts don't. Police are said to be building relationships with communities after the illegal parties held in London over the weekend. Met Commander Baz Javid said the majority of interactions with the police at events had been positive. Clearly, Baz Javid needs drug testing right away, seeing as last Wednesday saw more than 20 police constables injured during clashes at an illegal street party in Brixton, and on Thursday night police were pelted with objects whilst trying to disperse a party in Notting Hill. Baz Javid said officers were doing a very good job in some difficult circumstances. He said the first line is engaging and building relationships. You don't do that by walking into every situation with riot helmets and shields. No, you don't do it by speaking to people like shit either, which seems to be one of the main issues. He said, we need to build relationships, we need to make sure we engage effectively with communities, and we're only as good or as effective as our relationship with those communities. You're fucked then, aren't you? Met Commissioner Dick said the force had a duty to stop unlawful music events during the COVID-19 pandemic. She said the number of police injured was now heading up to 140 odd officers in the past 3 weeks, including those hurt during protests in the wake of the death of George Floyd in the US. Ms Dick said, "We have seen some large numbers of people completely flouting their health regulations, seeming not to care at all about their own or their family's health and wanting to have large parties. It is hot. Some people have drunk far too much, some people are just angry and aggressive, and some people are plain violent." If she hadn't have started with "some people have drunk far too much" and only used "some people are just angry and aggressive and some people are plain violent," I would have sworn she was talking about the police. On PAP Reports on the 22nd and 24th of June, we spoke about PC Jonathan Reynolds, a North Wales constable who was found guilty in a misconduct hearing of using excessive and unnecessary force on Jamie Cruz outside the Castle Vaults pub in Newton Powers on May 27 last year. Reynolds appeared to lose his temper with Cruz after he allegedly called him a bald cunt, and he sprayed him up close with Parva spray in the face and also pushed him with enough force for Cruz to fall over, causing bruising to his wrists. Well, although Reynolds was dismissed, he still faced a court appearance after the CPS agreed to 2 charges of assault. That case was heard just before the weekend, and ex-PC Reynolds was in fact found guilty at Swansea Magistrates Court, where they sentenced him to 20 weeks in prison. Suspended. Thames Valley Police will this week be sticking to the UK Police Force's mantra of transparency by holding a misconduct hearing for an unnamed police constable over an undisclosed matter in private. That's all we know at the moment, is the constable is accused of breaking the rules and is being questioned about an incident that occurred in December 2018. Now, normally members of the public can attend many misconduct hearings, but this one is using the excuse of safety due to COVID-19. This is going to take place on Wednesday and Thursday this week. I will update you as soon as I have any further information. 63-year-old former police detention officer Philip Thompson from the Oosewood estate in Oldham, Manchester, has been jailed by Minshull Street Crown Court for 3.5 years, not suspended. And you'll be even more shocked at the not suspended when you hear what he did. Thompson pleaded guilty to offences of attempted sexual communication with underage girls and attempted incitement of a child to engage in sexual activity and attempting to meet a child after grooming, after he got caught out by undercover detectives and a paedophile hunting group. Colin Buckle, prosecuting, said Thompson, whose handle online was Absailor0, was first involved in online conversations with a decoy run by police in October 2019. The defendant was told during the course of the messaging that the girl he was chatting to was aged 13 and lived in Dorset, the court heard. Thompson informed her he was a 62-year-old man from Manchester and asked the girl if she was really 13, said Mr Buckle. The court was told that the content of the conversation then became sexual, with the defendant making it clear he liked to meet girls around the age of 13. Mr Buckle said Thompson claimed he liked to meet them for sex and then went on to ask the decoy a series of personal and sexual questions. Patrick Williamson, defending, said whilst there was no actual physical victims of his client's offending, he accepted the serious position he had placed himself in. The judge said it was extremely sad to see someone of his age and previous good character in the dock for such offences that they're normally let off with a slap on the wrist. Thompson was also told he would be the subject of a sexual harm prevention order for 10 years and must sign the sex offenders register for life. 31-year-old James Hoyle from Lancashire, a former director of the Happy Days nursery chain in Blackpool and across the Fylde coast, has appeared at Manchester Crown Court to face charges of possession of over 200 images of children on his computer. When Hoyle's home in Didsbury was searched in May by police, they found what is said to have been children's knickers and bedding, although the court heard that Hoyle's girlfriend said the underwear belonged to her. The images found on Hoyle's hard drive were said to have been mostly Category C, which are classed as the least serious. The prosecution told the court that Hoyle had used auto-forensic measures to remove his browsing history and used what the court heard were virtual devices. I'm going to assume that these refer to VPNs, although it's not specifically explained what the virtual devices were. In his police interview, Hoyles gave a prepared statement telling the police he had mental health issues. Of course he did. His statement also said that his father and partner were monitoring his internet use and that he was engaging with an independent organisation which works with individuals who are being investigated for this type of offence. Which would clearly make sense for his girlfriend to own children's underwear. Right? However, Judge Anthony Cross QC said, "I am not going to accept that they are there for innocent purposes," but then also said it was significant mitigation in the case. Hoyle was sentenced by Judge Anthony Cross to 6 months in prison, suspended for 12 months. He was also ordered to complete 100 hours of unpaid work, 20 rehabilitation activity requirement days, and a programme addressing sexual offending on the internet. Welsh MP Jonathan Edwards has been issued with a caution by police after being arrested on May 20th on suspicion of assault. Although in the reports I have read it doesn't specifically say who he assaulted, they do say that his wife has accepted his apology and that police were called to the family home. So although the mainstream media seem to be skirting around the fact, it would appear that Welsh MP Jonathan Edwards assaulted his wife. He has been suspended from the Plaid Cymru, I know that's not how to pronounce it, but never mind, after referring himself to the Internal Disciplinary Commission. 29-year-old Nikki Jordan from Liverpool has launched legal action against Merseyside police after a violent arrest and injury caused by a police dog, which left her needing CPR and 86 stitches. Merseyside police said that Jordan had a piece of glass in her hand and had made threats to harm the public, although her legal representative, Ian Gould, said that Jordan was no longer a threat at the point the dog was allowed to bite her. Jordan has said she accepts that she has mental health issues and was suffering an episode at the time. She also says that she had called the police to hand herself in after an incident earlier in the evening. Ian Gould from DPP Law told a local newspaper he would be claiming Ms Jordan had been a victim of a totally unjustified use of force. He said, "This is a disturbing incident in which a police dog has been allowed to savagely bite my client's leg while she was being held down on the ground by 3 officers. My client was suffering from mental health issues and was in need of care and assistance, but instead she was made the victim of an animal attack. The wound she has suffered is likely to leave her with lifelong scars." The letter of complaint submitted to Merseyside Professional Standards Department says, among other things, "At the point when the police dog started to attack our client, she was being held on the ground by the 3 officers, and there was no justification for the dog to either be instructed or allowed to bite our client. Our client, bleeding from the wounds to her leg, was subsequently handcuffed and placed in the rear of a police car. When she protested about her treatment, an officer dragged her from the car and put her to the ground again so that she was laying on her left-hand side and could feel officers kneeling up against her back. Our client then felt one of the male officers applying pressure to the back of her neck. She believes that this is what caused her to lose consciousness, and then she came round, feeling the officer pulling on her ears." According to the complaint, the officers were then forced to call an ambulance when Miss Jordan suffered from an attack of what she says was brittle asthma, a rare and severe form of asthma. Ms Jordan says paramedics arrived at the scene, performed CPR after finding she had no pulse, but she was revived and rushed to Aintree Hospital, where she underwent surgery on her right leg. Jordan said, "I understand my behaviour was erratic and unacceptable, but I was trying to hand myself in when they have come with a taser and dog and approached me aggressively." Jury trials. From Magna Carta to our human rights, jury trials were always to ensure the fair dealing with any legal case. However, over time, the establishment have removed that right from many instances by introducing magistrates' court, or gateway courts as I like to call them, a way to deal with people without the fairness of a jury of our peers. These types of courts are mainly now designed to prevent fairness in matters generally where the courts can extort money by way of fines. Well, as I've spoken about in previous PAP reports, due to the so-called COVID situation, many courts are planning on either reducing the number of jurors in criminal matters or doing away with jurors altogether in some instances. Tim Story QC, described as a top Manchester lawyer, has spoken out about his concerns after the Justice Secretary indicated that some less serious crimes, including theft or burglary, could be decided on by a judge and 2 magistrates rather than a jury of 12 people. The government's proposal is said to only be temporary and would include the most serious cases, including murder. However, even less serious crimes can still mean punishment that has an impact on people's civil rights, and so should certainly be held with a jury. Mr Story said judges are not immune to making mistakes, and added that juries reflect diversity in society rather than the potential for cases to be decided on by case-hardened judges with fixed opinions. Justice Secretary Robert Buckland QC has said he was considering introducing legislation which would mean either way offences, which can be heard in a magistrates or Crown Court, could be tried by a judge and 2 lay magistrates, rather than a jury if the defendant pleads not guilty. In other words, tried by 3 people who don't know the law and whose decisions are based on the court clerk's recommendation. So ultimately the decision is not really based on the 3 magistrates, but rather on one individual who advises them. That sounds fair. Nationally, there are said to be 480,000 cases outstanding. Mr. Story said the government believes it needs emergency powers to deal with a crisis in the courts. These powers extend to the removal of the right to a trial by jury in some of the most serious criminal cases. We do not as yet know what the precise proposals are, but the Lord Chancellor has said enough for us to know that jury trial is under threat. What a frightening thought. As I said, they already removed our legal right to trial by jury when they started using magistrates' courts. To remove juries from Crown Courts would be devastating to the fundamental judicial system. Now, if you live in Leicester, you may not be aware yet that Priti Patel has said that the city may be facing a localised lockdown after cases of coronavirus are said to have increased. Patel said it was correct that the government was considering the move, but Mayor Sir Peter Salisbury said there was no immediate prospect of a lockdown. Sir Peter said he had been in constant contact with Chief Medical Officer and said it would have been far better if the level of testing in the city had been greater. He said Leicester is a large urban area, a total of nearly 600,000 people, with many neighbourhoods and communities within it. It's only really if we know whether there is an issue and where it might be, we can decide what, if anything, we need to do. The 600,000 people is not exactly a big city, is it? I mean, could it be that the government is simply trying to find a relatively small example to test the localised lockdown and have chosen Leicester as its testbed before moving on to larger cities once they've tested their plan? After all, when trying something new, especially on these kinds of scales, data needs to be collected, subjects need to be tested, and responses need to be practised. Local health experts confirmed they were involved in planning next steps in tackling the virus, with attention focused on the North Evington area. Surrey police have voluntarily referred themselves to the IOPC after police used a baton round on a member of the public who was subsequently arrested for racially aggravated threatening behaviour. Damien Delors was reportedly threatening people with a knife when police were deployed along with a police helicopter and dog units. Delors sustained bruising to his stomach from the baton round and was taken to hospital to be checked over. The East Surrey Divisional Commander said, due to the deployment of the baton round, we immediately notified the Independent Office for Police Conduct, who attended last night in an assessment role, and commenced our post-incident procedure. Although the level of injury sustained does not meet the threshold for a mandatory referral, we have chosen to voluntarily refer this to the IOPC for their consideration, as we are committed to ensuring our actions are transparent and fully accountable. Now, call me sceptical, but the fact that the police were so keen to refer themselves to the IOPC over an incident that didn't warrant their involvement makes me think this is due to the man's heritage. The police are walking on eggshells at the moment, afraid to act in many instances of criminal behaviour because they're becoming frightened of the consequences. I'm wondering who's going to be targeted next in order for them to keep up their statistics. Big thank you to channel Patreon supporters, of course. Your support is truly appreciated, and everybody who likes, shares, comments and subscribes. And that's all I have for you today. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, as I know many of you will. And until next time, please stay safe, look after each other, film the police, and of course, other officials. Good night, all. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like the content and you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so. In the description of every video there are some links to ways that you're able to help support the channel so I can continue putting out content. If you're unable to help us in that way, hit that subscribe button up the top there. If you haven't already, become a subscriber. That is support enough. Share the videos, comment, like, it all helps. If you're looking for something else to watch, up top there is my latest video. Down the bottom there is a video that YouTube recommends for you.